Hello Azure students. This video walkthrough, we're going to go ahead and create an Azure function app through the Azure portal. So what a function app is, it's just a little applet or method that we can create in Azure that just does a few lines of code that we can tell it that we want it to do, and we can also have it trigger it a few different ways. So this walkthrough would take approximately 5 minutes. I'll try not to have the video go much longer than that. So let's go ahead and jump into the Azure portal. Okay, now jumping into the Azure portal, you can see all of the resources we have across the top of the screen, and that's not all of the resources we can choose from. We can choose create a resource, we can go to more services, all resources. So let's go ahead and click on create a resource. And from there, what we're going to do is search for our Azure function. So you can search for your Azure function here on the left side of the screen, or we can just come up here and type in the word function and hit enter, and then it should come up with our function app. So here we can see we can create a function app, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the little button we have here for function app, and then from there I can just click create. So from the create, we have some options we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and pick from one of my subscriptions. So I can pick from my Azure subscription 1, for example, or my Azure for Students. I believe this is the subscription where I have the free $100 in credit. So I'm going to go ahead and click my Azure for Students subscription. From there, I can click a resource group. I have some resource groups already existing, but I want to go ahead for this example and click Create New. And Create New, when I follow the instructions, it says to use the name, let's see, where does it say? So it says to create my RG function dash my initials. I'm going to say dash DJD and click OK. From there, the function app name, I can say, according to the instructions, I'm going to go ahead and say function with a dash and then say DJD, and then also a random integer just to make it even more unique. I'm going to say 6. Okay. Okay, now after I have a function app name, I can go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and keep code checked. You can see we have function-djd6 .azurewebsites.net, so that'll actually be the URL we use to get to our function app, but we can go ahead and get to that here in a second. Let's go ahead and select a runtime stack. This is going to be in .NET Core 3.1, which is what the function will be written in. And then from here, you should be just about finished. Here's where you should take your first screenshot and show that you have your function app name along with your name up here at the top right-hand corner. So you should be able to take your first screenshot from here. So there's also a few other blades we can come across, but here's our storage account, because you need a storage account. It should maybe prompt you to create a storage account if you don't already have one, to store any files or whatnot you might want to have associated with your function app. Here's to monitor your function app with application insights if you'd like to do that. In the instructions, it might actually tell us to check no on this. Let me look. Okay, it looks like according to the instructions, it leaves this checked. So essentially anything that happens in your application will be monitored by application insights. Here's tags you can have on your function if you'd like to tag it with a particular unit or cost resource that you're going to have associated with this resource. And then we can click review and create. So you can see all of the information that you've had on this screen now to ensure that everything is correct before you create your function application. And then I'm going to go ahead and click create. So you can see at the top right that you are initializing your function app and submitting it for deployment. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video until it's finished. Okay, once your application is finished, you should see a button here that you have the ability to now go to the resource. So I'm going to click go to resource, and it should take you to your now function app. And from your function app, you should be able to now add in different functions you want to have trigger within your application. So you can actually go to the left-hand side here, click on functions, And here is where you can add in a particular function to your application. So it might take a second to initialize, and you should be able to click the Add button. And here's how you would like your function to be triggered. So it should give you a couple different ways to trigger your function. You can see we have an HTTP trigger, which is essentially saying I want this to be triggered over the internet using some URL. A timer, so I want this to happen on a particular timed basis. Something might have happened in my queue storage account that I want to be able to have fire off my function, or a service bus queue, or a service bus topic, or whatever the case may be that you learn about in other portions of your training here. But for now, I want to use an HTTP trigger to have this fired off over a web request. And you can see that you can have it HTTP trigger 1. And I'm going to leave the authorization level as function. So anything that has access to this function has access to the underlying components. I'm going to go ahead and leave it named HTTP trigger 1, and I'm going to go ahead and click Add Function. So now it's going to create our function. This one shouldn't take as long as the other deployment. So we see that it's already created. So it only took a few seconds to create. And then it goes ahead and takes us to our function here. So it allows me to code and test my function, which is actually what I'll be clicking here in a second. The first thing I want to do is get the function URL. That way I can go to it and actually fire off my function. So let's actually go to code and test first, and I might be able to get the function URL from there as well. So once this loads, we can see that I can also get the function URL from here, and I can also see what this function does or change the function. So we can see that I have some code for my function here written in C#. The framework is, if you remember, .NET Core 3.1. Here it logs some information. Don't worry too much about what the function does. If you know C#, you can probably figure out exactly what this function does. If not, don't worry too much about it. Let's go ahead and get the function URL. Go ahead and copy it to a clipboard. And then once we get the function URL, we can go ahead and open a new tab in Edge and paste our function URL. And then once we paste the function URL, what I want to do is send a query string. So when we have a query string, again, if you're a developer, you might know what a query string is, but if not, it's essentially information that we're going to pass through the URL. And usually what we do with a query string, you can already see there's already one query string here with this. We start with a question mark, and then we give it after the question mark, we're going to go ahead and give it the name of the variable we want to use. And then after that, we're going to put an equal sign to tell us that we want that variable to be set equal to anything that comes after this equal sign until essentially you see another question mark. So once we put in another question mark, we're going to say, okay, we're going to start another variable, and we want this next variable to be name, and I want to say name equals Dylan. And then when I click enter, it should take me to my Azure function. Okay, looks like we have a problem. Let's see, what did I forget to do here? Okay, sorry, I misspoke in the last section of the video. So they put a question mark, which essentially tells tells the program that you're going to have a list of variables that comes after this. But whenever you have a list of variables, you actually don't need any other question marks. So let's go ahead and just go here, which will take us to our Azure function. We can see that it executed successfully. This HTTP triggered function executed successfully. Pass a name in the query string or in the response body for a personalized message. In the request body. And the request body we could do from something like Postman, or we could do it in the page source or the inspect of the web page. But we can pass it with the query string. Since we already have a question mark here, actually the only thing we need is an @ sign or an and sign to tell the query string that we're going to have a second variable that came after the first, which I'm going to call name equals Dylan. And then if I go ahead and click enter, we can see that, hello Dylan, this HTTP triggered function executed successfully from our Azure function. And then from there we can take the last screenshot and put it into our document. We have successfully configured an Azure function in the Azure portal. So I can click out of this, and the next thing I want to do after I've submitted my assignment, I want to go ahead and come back here to Home, and then remember to delete your Azure function to make sure that you're no longer incurring any costs. So we can do that from here. Click Stop to our Azure function. Yes, I'd like to stop. And then wait for it to give us some feedback that it successfully stopped our web app. And then from then I'm going to click delete to ensure that I'm no longer incurring cost. Type in the app name, so function -djg6. So we can delete it from here, which I will do. Or if you wanted to do it another way, we can come back to Home again and delete the resource group that's attached to it, which I don't see here. Let's go to click resource groups. It looks like it might not exist anymore since I just deleted my app. So that concludes this video. I hope it helped. I'm going to do another video that covers Project 5 as well. So I'll see you there.